Tariff tantrum. Deported citizens. Oh, it's a full-blown drama, and India just dropped a response that will have Trump second-guessing his own playbook. Forget popcorn. This is spicy biryani level heat. The showdown? It's not happening on Twitter. It's happening in global trade, diplomacy, and India's refusal to blink first. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. I subscribe. And I'll personally welcome you into the family. With that said, let's get started. So here's the quick and dirty. Trump's administration didn't just raise tariffs, they went nuclear. We're talking a 50% slap on Indian goods. First, a 25% reciprocal move, and then another 25% because India kept buying Russian oil. Yeah, India Times and Wikipedia can confirm. This wasn't just economic policy, it was political pressure dressed up as a trade war. Now here's where it gets interesting. India didn't fold. Why? Because energy security and defense ties with Russia aren't just side quests. Their main storyline missions. Reuters and even Wikipedia spell it out. New Delhi's message is clear. We won't starve our economy to please Washington. And honestly, the sarcasm writes itself. Apparently, safeguarding your own national interest is now considered offensive. Number 1. India's bold comebacks. India didn't waste time mincing words. The government straight up called Trump's tariffs unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. Not concerning, not regrettable, but unreasonable. Basically, the diplomatic version of, what on earth are you even doing? According to India Times and Wikipedia, this wasn't just a statement. It was India planting a flag in the ground, making it crystal clear that Washington's pressure tactics weren't going to fly. But here's where the real power move comes in. India flat out rejected US pressure to reduce Russian oil imports. Why? Because the math makes sense. Reuters and the Atlantic Council point out that India needs affordable energy to keep its economy moving, and Russian oil, heavily discounted, is a lifeline. Cutting that off would be like telling a marathon runner to stop drinking water halfway through the race. It's not just bad advice, it's sabotage. So India's response was simple. We'll keep buying oil, thank you very much. That's strategic autonomy in action. And then the line that shook the stage. Prime Minister Modi declared India was ready to pay a very heavy price, but would never compromise on protecting its farmers. The Guardian covered it like a headline moment, and rightly so. In one sentence, Modi managed to frame this entire tariff war not as an abstract economic dispute, but as a fight to protect ordinary Indians. It's the kind of political judo move that turns pressure into points. Honestly, it's like watching a dad lay down the bedtime law. You can argue, you can cry, but you're still not getting out of it. Except here, instead of bedtime stories, we've got tariffs, oil, and a whole lot of global tension. Number 2. Domestic firepower, boycott, and taxes. Now let's talk about India's internal counterpunch. When a global heavyweight like the US tries to land a hit, India doesn't just block, it rallies the crowd. Calls for boycotting American brands started sweeping across the country. Reuters reported how companies like McDonald's, Apple, and Coca-Cola suddenly found themselves on the unofficial Do Not Buy list. Imagine the scene. Young professionals tweeting they'll ditch their iPhones, farmers vowing to skip Coca-Cola, even students swapping Mississippi burgers for local street food. Whether every boycott translates into lost revenue is debatable, but the symbolism, off the charts. It was India saying, if you hit us, we'll hit you in the wallet. And it wasn't just emotional pushback. The government rolled out real, material support. The Times of India and Wikipedia confirmed that steep GST cuts and tax relief were introduced to cushion the impact of tariffs. That's like getting punched in the ring, then immediately guzzling an energy drink and going in for a counter jab. India wasn't just absorbing Trump's tariff blows. It was actively finding ways to protect its businesses, farmers, and middle-class consumers from the shock. The tone here is hard to miss. India basically stepped into the MMA octagon and said, fine, you've got tariffs. We've got boycotts, tax cuts, and a billion people who know how to make do. This wasn't a one-dimensional defense strategy. It was a layered comeback that showed both resilience and creativity. And if there's one thing global markets hate, it's unpredictability. India just proved it could take Trump's economic haymaker and still grin, ready for the next round. Number 3. Strategic pivot. Quad. Russia, China. When Washington pressed the tariff button, India didn't sulk in a corner. It started shopping for new friends. And not just any friends. We're talking the geopolitical heavyweights, China and Russia. Reuters and The Guardian make it clear. Modi's presence at the SCO summit, posing shoulder to shoulder with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, wasn't some casual photo op. It was a deliberate statement, a carefully staged, if you push us away, we've got options. The Financial Times called it a symbolic shift that rattled not just Washington, but also its allies in the Indo-Pacific. This wasn't India abandoning old partners. It was India reminding the world that it doesn't live in anyone's shadow. By warming ties with Beijing and Moscow, India basically showed Trump that his tariff tantrum might have consequences far beyond a trade ledger. And let's be real, the optics of Modi laughing alongside Xi and Putin, that's the kind of political theater that sends signals without saying a word. And then came the defense twist. Reports, especially from Reuters and Wikipedia, suggested India had paused US defense procurements in response to the tariff war. Now, the government quickly denied halting those billion-dollar arms deals, but even the hint of a freeze was enough to make headlines. That's because in geopolitics, perception is power. If India starts slowing down on American fighter jets and helicopters, and instead looks east or doubles down with Russia, suddenly, the Pentagon starts sweating. It was India's way of saying, we won't cut our nose to spite our face, but don't assume we're locked into your supply chain forever. So, here's the dramatic flair. When the US clicks tariff, India hits a line. And the plot twist. Alliances aren't carved in stone. They shift. They evolve. They remind leaders that in the great game of international politics, nobody has a monopoly on loyalty. Number 4. Diplomatic swagger. Modi's subtle comeback. Now here's where things get juicy. Just when it looked like the tension was reaching a boiling point, Modi pulled a classic diplomatic move. He acknowledged Trump's so-called positive assessment of India. India Times and the Economic Times reported how this olive branch moment restored a sprinkle of warmth to an otherwise chilly relationship. It was like saying, okay, you called me unreasonable yesterday, but today you said I'm important. Fine, I'll smile for the cameras. But don't be fooled, this wasn't India bending over backward. It was more like a polite head nod while still standing its ground. Because behind the smiles and handshakes, the red lines remain firmly in place. No farmers are being sacrificed, and no oil lifelines are being cut. The mixed signals are intentional. It's a balancing act, a way of keeping doors open without conceding the fight. And honestly, this is where India's diplomacy really shines. It's part sassy retort, we're not backing down, and part subtle wink, but we're still civil. It's the kind of maneuver that makes international politics look less like rigid chess and more like a ballroom dance. One misstep, and toes get crushed. But with India leading its own steps, Trump suddenly doesn't look like the only one in control of the rhythm. Number 5. Big picture wrap. At the end of the day, this dust-up isn't really about tariffs. It's about something much bigger. India's strategic autonomy. As The Guardian, the Atlantic Council, and even Wikipedia point out, this entire clash is a wake-up call. India isn't just a participant in global trade. It's an independent power that refuses to be boxed in by anyone's rules but its own. The tariffs didn't weaken India. They highlighted just how determined New Delhi is to chart its own course, even when the world's biggest economy tries to pull the strings. And let's be blunt, the standoff also exposed some serious flaws in Washington's playbook. Analysts from the Atlantic Council and the Council on Foreign Relations argue that the US has leaned too heavily on coercion, hoping threats and economic sticks would bend India's will. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Instead of isolating India, it gave New Delhi the perfect stage to showcase resilience, strengthen alternative alliances, and flip the script. What was meant as pressure turned into proof that America's old-school tactics may no longer fit the realities of 21st century geopolitics. So what's India really doing here? It's not cutting ties, it's recalibrating. Not breaking, but diversifying. Expanding markets in Asia, deepening ties with Russia, and building narrative control at home. It's a strategy that says, we don't need to slam the door on the US. We're busy building our own corridor. That's the witty genius of it. India isn't reacting emotionally. It's making structural changes that will outlast a single president, a single tariff tantrum, or a single diplomatic storm. In the big picture, Trump might regret his actions not just because of the short-term fallout, but because he might have accelerated what India was already working toward: greater independence, broader alliances, and a louder voice on the global stage. And once that voice is established, good luck trying to silence it with a tariff. So when you zoom out, this isn't just a trade fight, it's a turning point. India has shown the world that it won't be cornered, won't be bullied, and definitely won't mortgage its future just to keep Washington happy. By standing firm, diversifying its alliances, and rewriting the narrative, India has turned Trump's tariff war into a global lesson on resilience and autonomy. And that's the kind of play that reshapes international power dynamics for years to come. With that said, thanks for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And until next time.